Ahead
I
and
just started it.
awesome. Thank you, love. I'm grateful. All right. First of all, I wanted to share that I am going to post in the chat room what you need to do in order to raise your hand if later on, after we're done with the discussion, if you want to raise your hand. Chat room. And okay, there we go. Perfect. So, first of all, I want to welcome all of you. Being here today and talking about this amazing topic of anger is great because anger has gotten a really bad rap. And the reality is, anger is just another emotion, but we've been taught to go ahead and make it good or make it bad. And the reality is, feelings and emotions aren't good or bad, they just are. And often our feelings and emotions can be indicators as to what is up for us to heal. So, one of the things that I wanted to do is, first of all, welcome you. Because you've signed up for this, you're obviously interested in your own personal growth and development. And it's such a great idea to take the mystery out of anger and to bring it into a place of discussion and to explore what about anger is my relationship to it. And then being able to understand other people and how they react to anger. It's just a wonderful and empowering thing. I want to share with you, if you don't already know me or you haven't met with me, my name is Rita Henry, and I'm an intuitive counselor, and I help people who are struggling in their relationships and they just want to make the pain go away. So I help them to go ahead and work through messy feelings and emotions. And the ability to talk about anger is just one of those messy feelings and emotions. So I am so honored to be connecting and to have you a part of today's discussion. And from a housekeeping standpoint, as far as how it's going to flow, first of all, we're going to be having a discussion about anger, just so we're on the same page of understanding. And then I'll be answering as many questions as possible. And if inspired, you can also raise your hand. And I put in the chat how to do that if you aren't aware of how to raise your hand. I also wanted to acknowledge that the session is going to be recorded and is being recorded so that you're going to get a follow-up email and you can watch this as many times as you like. And then also there are some other individuals who really wanted to be a part of today's session, but because of their schedules and so on, aren't able to. And lastly, I want to acknowledge that it's your responsibility to get what you came for in today's session. It's really acknowledging that anger is something that, even for myself, let's be clear, I used to absolutely suck at anger. I mean, from a place of not understanding, not knowing what was real, what wasn't. That was all about me. And in my household growing up, my dad was the only one who was allowed to get angry. If anyone else did anger in the household, we were totally punished. We were shut down. He wouldn't talk to us. He would um, be mainly mentally and emotionally abusive, but sometimes the whole physical thing got involved too. And it was such a painful way to live. And the reality is, within my journey with anger, then when I got married, I would, and as an adult, I would move through life pretending my anger wasn't there because I wanted to be a good girl. And then I would explode because, right, I was suppressing, I was depressing, I was repressing the anger. And that's not the same as freedom. So I would absolutely explode. And then I would feel guilty, just completely washed with guilt, right? Because I wasn't being a good girl. And then I would apologize for my existence and then rinse and repeat. And so I was caught in this really unhealthy cycle of not being able to be present in other people's lives in a healthy way. And so within it, I had no idea there was another way. I was completely clueless. I was just caught, just like in a cycle, an insulated pathway gets created when you learn how to ride a bike. Well, I was caught in this insulated pathway of how I dealt with anger or didn't deal with anger. And it was really, really painful. So in today's workshop, we get to take a deep dive into what is anger? Like, what are we really afraid of? So it's interesting when we are angry, and I wanted to connect with when I am angry, one of the things that I needed to learn and I needed to understand is if I'm angry, it's almost always because I'm afraid. Even if I don't know it, even if I can't see it, simply by knowing that I'm afraid or that the other person who is before me is acting out of anger simply because he's or she is afraid changes everything. It's an absolute total deal breaker. So recently I had a gentleman come in for a session and we were talking about anger, and I had mentioned to him, when you're angry, you're afraid. And he's like, no, that's not true. And so I'm like, okay, lay it on me. I'm so glad you're questioning that. I'm so glad you're not just taking what I'm saying as truth. Bring it on. Tell me everything about all the reasons why you're afraid, and we're going to dissect them. We're going to break them down. So one by one, he started sharing at work, at home, with his family, because he felt justified in his anger. And then he came to break it down. Every single one, he was actually afraid. So let's look at that. Is it true? So, for example, a lot of people experience anger when they're driving, right? You're driving along, someone cuts you off. Oh my God. Rage. You don't even know why. Why? Because you're afraid. What are you afraid of? You're going to be late for work. Those fuckers didn't respect you enough. They aren't loving, valuing, and respecting you. They acted like you didn't matter. They just cut you off. What are you afraid of? You're going to get in an accident. So more and more as we connect with being able to see that anger is directly related to the fact that we're afraid, the more we can start to dissect in the keys to the castle, whether it's us who is afraid and we're angry. Why? And a lot of times we want to get back in control. There was an individual, Margarita, you had submitted a question. How brilliant. Talk about how anger is related to control. If I'm afraid, I often want to control the other person, so then I can take my power back. So just this week, I had a session with a client, and when I had asked her, what are you afraid of? She said, I'm afraid of getting hurt in any situation. So the first thing I do is try and figure out how to avoid that. And she came to realize that her filter of defensiveness, she was reacting to what she thought was going to happen instead of what was in front of her. And it kept her from being present and living an inspired, loving life. And so it was really a beautiful, beautiful thing. And again, I had shared in my household growing up, my dad was the only individual who was allowed to get angry. And the reality is that as a child, everyone in our family walked on eggshells as we tried to control or stop Dad from being angry. Well, the reality was that beautiful man, that beautiful soul, was an angry fox. And he had a lot of reasons to be angry. His entire life as a child, he was abused. And so, what he was doing by being angry is he was stuck in his childhood. In his entire life, he wanted to abandon and reject people who were closest to him, who he actually loved, before we abandoned and rejected him. And so his perception was, in order to be safe and to stay safe, is he needed to, because he was so afraid of being abandoned and rejected, he needed to be the one to abandon and reject us before we abandoned and rejected him. In his childhood, which I didn't know the story of his childhood until even really the most of it until after he died. And the really ironic thing about all of that, and my dad truly was a beautiful man and a beautiful soul, and he was never able to deal with that. But in his advanced years before he died, he actually forgot to be angry because, drum roll, he got Alzheimer's. And so because of Alzheimer's, he forgot to be angry. And all of a sudden, he could be a more loving man. And even though the last handful of years, he didn't remember my name, he always had a glimmer of recognition of who I was. And one time, as I was getting ready to leave after I had visited him, I turned around to look at him, and his arm was up, and he wanted a hug. That wasn't my dad. He never did that. My dad told me he loved me less than a handful of times in my life. Like, that was just unheard of. And he would never talk about his childhood. So this beautiful man, this beautiful soul, was stuck in a place of fear. He was afraid. And let's be clear, it wasn't like mental health and well-being was a thing and people knew how to work on it. So he was innocent. And it only took me and my willingness to do my work to be able to understand that. So again, as a child, we all walked on eggshells as we tried to control or stop Dad from being angry. And we did it because we wanted to control and manipulate things that were beyond our control. Because again, Dad was angry, but we did it because we were trying to feel safe. And so one night it was, I went home for the weekend, and this was before my dad had dementia and Alzheimer's. And I remember as I started to do my work and I started to understand what was happening, I went home for the weekend, and it was on Friday night, and Dad started to pull his bullying anger stuff, and he just came out really harshly. And you know what's really funny? I have no idea what Dad did. I just remember that experience. And so he lashed out, and I casually looked at him and I said, "Keep it up, and I am getting up and I am leaving right now." And I was just relatively casual about it, but I said it in a tone that he knew I meant it. And then for the rest of the weekend, he was Prince Charming because he didn't want me to leave. He wanted me to be around. And yet I was able to meet him from a place of clarity and understanding. So I really recognize that many people question, how can I control the other person? And it's so fascinating because, are you ready for the answer? Drum roll. You can't. Why would you want to? You want to control them so you can feel safe. But when you try and control someone else, you are controlled. That's a universal law. And so what's the new way? Whether it's you or someone else who is angry, the new way is when you're confronted with an angry person, or when you are angry, you must understand, oh, they're afraid. Oh, I'm afraid. And even if you don't understand why, simply by knowing that they are afraid and being aware, that changes your experience completely. And with that awareness, you get to take control of how you experience their anger. And at this point, when you are aware of what's going on, you're no longer the victim. And you get to take your power back, and you completely get to witness their fear in what's going on. You get to witness their pain, their projections, their woundedness. And you get to realize their woundedness is nothing about you, and it's not personal. And with this awareness, you can even bring compassion and understanding to the angry person you're dealing with. And a lot of times we want to ask the question, and we're curious about, but how can I deal with their anger? Well, here's the deal. You are in control because you teach people how to treat you, right? So I wasn't trying to control my dad. Well, as I started to do my work, I realized, oh, I can't control my dad. I can only control me. So by my turning to my dad and saying, if you keep this up, I'm leaving. I'm out of here. Then he got to make a decision, but the only thing I could control was me. But if I was trying to control my experience and I wanted him to change and him to not be angry, that's just caught in the loop of control, which is never going to work. So for everyone, take a deep breath and allow yourself to sink in, and allow yourself to reflect on how you've been caught in this loop of your relationship with anger in trying to control other people, and what that has looked like and what that's felt like for you. Because when you see the truth of angry people, it allows you to take your power back. And it's so freeing. Because, but let's actually back up. Whenever you are triggered by an angry person, guess what? That's your stuff. That has nothing to do with them. And knowing that is actually freedom, because again, you can't control anyone else. You can only control yourself. So in my first marriage, I was married for 27 years, and I was married to a very angry person. But the reality is, there was a balance there. I sucked at anger. He was good at displaying anger, but it was always under the radar. It wasn't as obvious as my dad's expression of anger, okay? But the anger was still there. And so for me, as I started to do my work to realize, how did I get here? What's going on? And again, just like I had mentioned earlier, my experience of anger, and I sucked at it, was I would come from a place of suppress, repress, and depress. And then all of a sudden, something small would happen because I wasn't honest with anger along the whole way, and I would explode. And let's be clear, his anger compared to mine, he didn't hold a candle. Even though he was the angry person and I would suppress, repress, depress, explode, his anger was baby shit compared to mine. So once I started to realize, oh, I had anger issues because I didn't know how to bring consciousness to my anger, right? So anger, when we bring unconsciousness to it, can do damage. When we bring unconsciousness to anger, we can hurt other people and ourselves greatly. And it can be very painful and very explosive. But when we bring consciousness to anger, just like Gandhi and Martin Luther King, as far as, people on the outset, powerful things can happen. Even when I'm facilitating healing retreats, if I need to convey or communicate with someone, and if they're angry, then I need to match them at times with that edge. Because if I'm coming to them with, oh, loving kindness, all of its loving kindness, whether I meet someone with an edge or I meet them with open-hearted compassion, I'm in a surrendered state, mirroring them so they can hear me. My son Thomas, which by the way, he's always given me permission to talk about him so that we can all learn from each other. He came from a place of absolute anger, especially in his teenage years into college. So high school into college, 3 to 4 years. And man, he was such a master teacher for me, because he would come from this place. I would say he was a warrior, but he didn't have the conscious piece, right? He would come to it unconsciously. So he would slice and dice me up and I'd be left in a puddle. And I was trying to convince Thomas that I was a good mom. He should love me. Well, the reality is it wasn't his job to love me. I was abandoning and rejecting myself, and I wanted him to love, value, and respect me. That was ridiculous. It was never his job. And so with Thomas, once I started to do my work and he would elevate and get angry, oftentimes I would need to meet him with an edge, even though I was still in a place of open-heartedness, peace, and understanding. I could just rise up, but I needed to do my work to deal with my anger, my insecurities, before I could meet Thomas in that open-hearted place. So be gentle with yourselves, because sometimes the process, when we start to learn to do anger, is really messy, right? I don't know my multiplication tables until I do. I don't know how to walk until I do. So it's okay to get your chops through first doing it wrong, right? But bring awareness to what feels good, what doesn't feel good. And to begin with, when you're trying this on, it's going to feel good, because we don't know what the new way is until we do. We're trying it on. But again, if you're triggered, there is something that's coming up for you to heal. So gentleness and ease. And then I want to also offer to you, actually, I already shared that, so that's beautiful. Now I want to actually move into some of the questions that you submitted. We had well over, 100 and, 20 some people sign up, and your questions blew me away. And I was so inspired by your desire to really lean into this topic. So one of the questions that was shared, I get angry at myself whenever I get triggered about something I thought I healed from. I no longer want to be hard on myself. How can I begin to treat myself with compassion when this happens? I love that question. When you are getting angry at yourself for getting angry, that's actually kind of ironic, right? Because we're making anger wrong. Anger isn't wrong. It's just simply another emotion, and it's sharing with you information that there's something coming up for you to heal. And so it's just like that insulated pathway. So what do we do when we get angry? In awareness, we see, oh, look, now I got angry here. Now I'm angry at myself. You want to do an interrupt, right? A timeout, and stop, cancel, cancel, cancel. You want that interrupt to be there. And it's a really healthy place to allow that interrupt to snap yourself or even someone else when we come from a place of acting in an unexpected way. So if you, for example, if someone else is the angry person and all of a sudden, for example, when my children were young, I tried to control them so their father wouldn't get angry. It was the same thing that I experienced when I was growing up. And so I went and came from a place of trying to control my children. Remember, whenever I try and control someone else, I'm being controlled. And so the interrupt is in awareness. Oh, look, even if I don't do anything different, or even if I don't do anything, I just stop and witness and stop the action, or even if I still do the action, but in awareness, oh, look, I am doing this again. And then that awareness, you get to say, stop, cancel, cancel, cancel. What's the new way? Making sure that there is an interrupt. So what is the new way? How can I treat myself with more compassion? Recognizing you're feeding the anger by continuing to go out there and beat yourself up. So instead of putting the anger on the outside, now you're bringing the anger on the inside, and you're still making anger wrong. Anger isn't wrong. It's just telling you that something's up for you to heal. So another fabulous question. I did not grow up with a healthy relationship to anger, me either. And though I have come to value and understand the change that can come from anger, especially in awareness, I find expressing my anger in a healthy way almost impossible. Can you share ways to feel into and release anger in a way that does not cause harm? Love that question. And the answer ultimately is awareness, okay? That's one thing. If you can bring awareness to your anger and recognize that the very first thing is to do that interrupt, stop, cancel, cancel, cancel. Oh, look, what am I afraid of? Asking yourself the question, what am I afraid of? I'm afraid they don't respect me. I'm afraid they don't love me. You know what? It's not their job. It's your job to love, value, and respect yourself. And it's so fascinating to be able to recognize that often we've had unhealthy boundaries within ourselves, and then we want someone else to be loving, kind to us when we haven't done that for ourselves. Years after my experience with Thomas, it was probably a couple of years ago, he said to me, "Mom, how did you do it? I was so cruel to you." And I said, "Thomas, I took my power back from you. I realized it wasn't your job to love me at all, ever. It was my job. And my experience with you is exactly what I needed so that I could take my power back and get a healthy relationship and learn how to do my work and to love, value, and respect myself." So you were a major impetus to my growth, and I have nothing but gratitude. I also want to express something else. Since Thomas's father didn't know how to have a healthy relationship with anger, it has to come out somewhere in the family. So where does it come out? Children or pets? If anger is not being expressed honestly, it has to go out somewhere. It's an energy, right? So it comes out with children or pets. And I said, "Thomas, you did everyone in the family a favor. And I really apologize that we didn't know how to do anger in a healthy way. But I'm so grateful and I'm so proud of you. And I'm so sorry that we didn't know any other way." And that experience and how your role in it, Thomas, is not the truth of who you are. You were playing out the energy, and I'm so proud of you. It's absolutely amazing. So good. Another question. Anger is sometimes justified, especially now in a world where there's legitimate anger. And I'm laughing at the term legitimate anger. All anger is legitimate, right? Even if we're wounded fucks and we don't know innocently any other way, we don't have to make that anger wrong. Now, the reality is often we're triggered and we're angry, but we often think we're angry for reasons that aren't really the real cause, right? Like I can get angry because you're wearing a red shirt, and the reality is that's who no one cares. I don't even care. So if I'm angry at you because of something you're doing, it's a projection. And so once you start to realize that when someone else is angry, it has nothing to do with you. That's really is a key to the castle. One other thing that I wanted to recognize is this question. I feel conflicted about anger, and I've often suppressed it. Not only because I wasn't allowed to be angry as a child, but as I grew older, I heard so much wisdom that discouraged it. Was Buddha ever angry? I love this question. It is absolutely genius. So here's the deal. We have this bad story. It's not even true, but we make it up. If we're really spiritual, then we're never going to get angry. And so this thought encourages people to avoid, to pretend, to deny that they're angry, because good girls and good boys don't get angry, right? And it's so fascinating, and including, did Buddha ever get angry? Dalai Lama has even said that when he gets angry, the anger can't be sustained because of the level of consciousness. He realizes what it is and it just absolutely dissipates. I actually experience the same thing. If anger begins to arise, I bring truth to it and it has nothing to hold its chops onto, and it dissipates. But be gentle. We have a lot of work to lean into to what is the cause, what is the feeling, so the anger can dissipate. So again, it's recognizing anger isn't a good or bad it's just another emotion. And it's information that's telling us what's up for us to heal. So when I'm triggered, there's always something coming up for me to be healed. And that is the key to the cancel. Because if I'm trying to change someone else, that's just painful. Even if the other person is being an asshole, right? If I'm triggered, there's something coming up for me to heal. And I get to ask, who am I in relationship to this experience? So that was really powerful. And with that, I want to ask, does anyone want to raise their hands and ask a specific question about anger? And if not, I can continue going with some of these questions.
Rita, there is a question in the chat that you could respond to.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I see that now. What if the angry person is your 4-year-old? I love that question. Again, it's recognizing, it's really the 4-year-old getting angry. What they're saying is, I'm afraid I'm not going to get my way. And they are responding to how you have taught them. So if we're angry, if our 4-year-old is angry and they want to get their own way, and they realize that by getting angry, they can manipulate you into getting what they want, then you have taught them that by you having unhealthy boundaries, that they can manipulate you with their anger. And so to begin with, when you start to get clean and healthy into what works for you or what doesn't work for you, then you get to see the impact on how you treat other people, how to treat you. So for example, one of the things that I would do as I started to do my work with anger, when the children wanted something, I would thank them for their clarity. And if it wasn't something that I wanted to do, for example, my boys in video games, they were never my thing. Sometimes I would sit by them and I would share time with them in the same room because they wanted mom time, but I'm not going to hop on and play. It was never my thing. They were not wrong for wanting me to play video games. And no, I'm not going to do it. And so creating healthy boundaries requires knowing who you are and what works for you and what doesn't. Sometimes when my children would ask for things, I would be very happy to do whatever they wanted, even if it wasn't what I wanted, because it made me happy to make them happy. But if I did it and I was bitter, angry, and resentful, then that comes across as pissy because I've lost myself. And that's not contributing to world peace. And that's just not a kind and loving thing to do. And so I also want to acknowledge Dr. Jenna, younger self, inner child angry, 4 years old. That is such a perfect exploration, Dr. Jenna. Thank you for that. So it's recognizing, oh, myself is a 4-year-old. Look at how much freedom she had and what did she need to do in order to get what she wanted. Because again, all of our relationships are a reflection of our relationship with ourselves, right? So if we're bitter, angry, and resentful, that isn't going to translate well into being an authentic mama. But I didn't know myself well enough to be able to be clean in my interactions with others. So that was never going to work well with anyone. I taught and led from the place of disconnect. And I'm going to quick plug in my computer to make sure that I stay connected, because that's what this is all about, right? I want to also acknowledge the question, what if we are angry because another person is making choices that will threaten the life of another? Physical threats are not to be taken lightly. Someone actually can physically hurt us. And if intervention needs to be taken to remove yourself from the household, to be able to report it somewhere else, it's something that you don't want to take lightly. However, I also want to acknowledge that sometimes those threats out of anger are being done to control and manipulate the other person, and there's not anything else behind it aside from the intention to manipulate the other person, right? And so being aware and allowing yourself to look at the situation from a neutrality. Oh, what are they afraid of? They're afraid I'm going to leave this relationship. I'm going to abandon and reject them. Well, the reality is they're abandoning and rejecting themselves all over the place. So, of course, they want me to be the one to love, value, and respect them. And even when I try, it's never enough, right? It's an empty hole. Because the reality is, we often abandon and reject ourselves. And so that causes us to be pissy, us to be angry. And it's this cycle, it's this insulated pathway, just like riding a bike creates insulated pathways of nerves in our body. The same is for the impact of how we have with anger. It's just an insulated pathway. So how do we have a new experience? In awareness, oh, look, what am I afraid of, or what are they afraid of? Does that make sense? Yay! I love, 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 and value and respect myself. I love that, Sue. That's just fabulous. It's learning how to do that more and more. So if no one else is raising their hands at this time, I'm just going to answer a couple of other questions because they've been so fabulous. So when someone becomes angry and it happens so quickly, why do we respond with anger? We respond with anger because we're afraid. We're afraid we're going to get hurt. We're afraid we're not in control. So the best way to respond, especially if it's a fight and they and then they flight and you're left with a slew of emotions, what it's saying is that you have some work to do regarding your relationship with anger. You're getting angry and elevating and mirroring their anger, but if we bring consciousness or awareness to it, everything changes. Oh, what am I afraid of? I'm afraid I'm going to lose my relationship with my child. And it really required me with my son Thomas to recognize that part of taking my power back from him was making the decision that I get to love him and he had nothing to say about it, whether I ever saw him again or not. It was that level of surrender. And it took me a long time to come to that, right? I wanted him to love me. And you know what? It wasn't his job. It wasn't his job at all. And now I love that we get to have an amazing relationship, but he helped me to get all grown up. He was a master teacher, and I just so deeply appreciate that. So how can I stop myself from that initial negative thought that leads me to anger? Don't. It's actually the wrong question. That there's a more effective question. It's recognizing that anger isn't bad at all. Use your awareness of what's underneath the anger. You're afraid. What are you afraid of? And then use that as an entry point to get intimate with yourself, to figure out what is indeed up for you to heal. And someone asked the wonderful question, what's the origin of anger triggers? Like, why do I get triggered by anger? Fear, you're afraid. I love that question. And I often like to have walk on eggshells around my mom and my husband. They both seem to have explosive, angry outbursts. How can you help me learn to get past this? Recognize and start diving into the question, what are they afraid of? And that will help you. And someone in the chat room just asked, aren't there times when you will experience anger and it is not triggering anything? Child abuse as an example. So I'm not exactly clear on that question. If I'm not triggered, one of two things is happening. Either I'm shut down. So when my dad used to get angry, I would shut down. I would just shut down in the presence of anger until the straw that broke the camel's back, bah, and then I'd explode. It wasn't pretty, people. So the beautiful thing about our humanity is we do it really bad until we know how to do it better. It's all about contrast. So be gentle with yourselves along the way. So if you're not experiencing any trigger, it's either because you're shutting down or you're healed. I can be in the presence of anger right now. I am qualified to talk about this topic because I've sucked at it so deeply and I've opened to experience anger in a new way. And I can meet it with understanding, and I don't have to react and feel all abandoned and rejected. And if I do, I have something that's coming up for me to heal, and I don't have to manipulate anyone else in my life. I get to move into it with awareness, and that's just amazing. Someone else had shared, I was just talking with a friend about her son's anger. She doesn't know where, and he tells her he hates her. Could this be from medical stuff he is going through, or is it manipulation? How can she get that out of him? I love that question. How can she manipulate him into not being angry anymore? She can't. Like, that's the point. We try and control and manipulate someone else to change. I want you to change so I can feel safe. Not your job, but your job is to say, okay, what is my relationship with my son? I have clean and healthy boundaries. You either stop this or I'm not going to do this. And if we have this with younger children, I guarantee you it's our boundaries have sucked and we haven't taught them how to treat us. They've learned that control and manipulation is the way to go. And so it plays out. It played out with my children. And I don't really forgiving ourselves for not knowing any better is really an important thing to do. So, with this right here and right now, I want to take us into a place of really allowing ourselves to reflect on our own relationship with anger and take us into a bit of transformation, is what I'm hearing, within our own process and our own relationship to anger. So you can take everything that we've just talked about and really personalize it. And before I start that, I also want to acknowledge that yesterday, as I was having a conversation with you, Sheila, I realized that all the information that I have about anger, you can't simply just cover it in an hour. So I created a program on releasing anger. I just decided to do this yesterday. And you'll be able to, we'll do a 2-hour deep dive into anger, and you'll be able to process specific experiences where you're locked in pain and struggle. So it'll be a 2-hour session, and it's a special event that I'm just inviting the people who have signed up within this group for this recording, and it will be included in as a link in the recording when we send out the recording to this session. So that'll be $129, and we'll just go in and we'll take a deep dive. We'll step through the process of anger. So if you're inspired by it, love to have you come play. So with that, allowing yourselves to take a deep, deep breath and using your breath to sink into your body. And allow yourself to pick one topic, and I know some of you will automatically pick 25, and I still love you and go ahead. But allowing yourself to pick a topic that you have either been really angered by yourself, or you've been the recipient of anger, or both. Just pick one topic where anger has been there and take a deep, deep breath. And allow yourself to see the person right before you who you're having this issue with, or maybe it's a group collectively of people. You know, it might be everyone on your mom's side of the family who's before you. And if that doesn't feel safe in your visualization, actually just go ahead and put an iron cage around them. Like, you know, they're 5-10 feet in front of you. And allow yourself to take a deep, deep breath. And as you take that deep breath, connect with, what am I afraid of? What am I afraid of in this relationship? Am I afraid that they're going to not see the love that I am? Am I afraid that they're misunderstanding me? Am I afraid that they're abandoning and rejecting me? What am I afraid of? Am I afraid that I'm really not lovable? Because that's really the reason why I connected with a lot of the resistance that I was connecting with. I was trying to convince everybody that I was lovable, because underneath, I didn't think I was. So taking a deep, deep breath, and again asking yourself, in this relationship, in this experience, what am I afraid of? And now connecting with, even though I'm afraid, I'm opening to the possibility of surrendering, releasing the need for this pain and this struggle in my life. Even though I've been afraid of being abandoned and rejected by them, I'm opening to the possibility of recognizing how deeply, how often I've abandoned and rejected myself. Taking a deep, deep breath and using your breath to sink into your body. Open to seeing the things in this other person that trigger you. Open to seeing the things within yourself that trigger you. Oh, I'm not lovable. I'm not enough. Oh, they need to love me, otherwise I'm not safe. They need to be in my life. No, they don't. Your stories are keeping you held in pain and struggle. Oh, my children need to like me. My family of origin needs to like me. No, they don't. It's not their job. And this may this may feel like a death for you. And at times it is a death, but it's a death of your ego self who wants to control things. Your ego wants to keep you safe. But the reality is it doesn't have a very high level of consciousness. So one more time, taking a deep, deep breath, using your breath to sink into your body. And recognize, even though I've had all of these fears, I'm opening to the possibility of loving, valuing, and respecting myself. Washing, purifying, clearing, cleansing, healing, and renewing. Knowing I am love. I am love. I am love. And I am loved. I am loved. I am loved. Again, inviting this miraculous light of healing truth into the top of your head, into your brain, your mind, your thoughts, your ideas, your ideals, your judgments, criticisms, your identity, the way you've related to other people in your past is not the truth of who you are. It's just an experience. And we will always revert back to our lowest level of consciousness. Why? Because it's there. Your ego has wanted to keep you safe. But the technical term is your ego has shit consciousness. So it's trying to keep you safe out of a place of fear. And so this isn't about destroying your ego. That's not kind. That's not loving. But it's about inviting that place inside of you, which is so afraid, to be merged with pure consciousness and elevated. So you can know you are love, you are love, you are love, and you are loved. You are loved. You are loved. Even though I haven't felt safe in my past, I'm opening to loving, valuing, and respecting myself now. again and again, knowing you are love, you are love, you are love. And knowing you are loved, you are loved, you are loved. And so it is. So, as a wrap, what we're really talking about in our relationship to anger, first and foremost, is to bring awareness to it. And a lot of the times that can be really painful because our ego doesn't want to acknowledge what a shitty relationship we've had with anger and how we've had such a deep misunderstanding about anger. And so, right here and right now, allowing yourself to rub your hands together and to massage your face, going up the bridge of your nose, across your forehead, and down your jawline, and connecting with, I love you. I am so sorry I didn't know any other way. And connect with your innocence, even though you haven't known how to do anger. It's okay. And now massage your ears. In reflexology, our ears map in Chinese medicine to all parts of our body. So if there's any aspects of your ears that are painful, give them a little extra loving as you massage them. This is known as auricutherapy, and it's really lovely, and it's kind. So with that, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here, for exploring, bringing more consciousness, more awareness to our world, because it's like a ripple effect. When you stop engaging in painful relationship with anger, then that automatically ripples out and changes the world. So I want to thank you for your courage and to invite you to connect with world peace in this manner. You're amazing, and I'm so proud. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And again, I want to thank you for participating. You're very brave. You're very courageous.